Hello and welcome to another episode on Hero TV of the Fulfilling Singlehood in Married Life. I am Benedicta Mbong and it's always a pleasure to have you. How have you been this season of coronavirus? It's all over the place. They call it a global pandemic and it's affecting everyone's life. A story touched my heart really recently of someone, a doctor in the United States who was infected, tested positive, after a few weeks got well, and then went on to commit suicide. That touched my heart so deeply. I was wondering, I Googled her story. First I watched it on 700 Club and then I Googled her story, saw it was true. And of course her dad was devastated by the event. Those who are on the front lines, our doctors, nurses and medical practitioners generally, are bedeviled by the fear and the trauma that comes with watching people die, and which case has any hope at all. And going through that day in and day out is difficult, really. And so when I began to think about how someone who had fought and come out of coronavirus and then committed suicide, what that kind of person must have been through, I just had an idea what really frontliners are going through. But there's hope, you see, because life is full of challenges. Yes, of course, the coronavirus kind of challenge wasn't something anybody could have envisaged from the top to the bottom. You know, we didn't see this magnitude of challenge coming in 2020. I know you had hopes, dreams, aspirations for the year, and I did too. But today our focus really about in connection to coronavirus is the family, marriage, and how you're doing in your marriage. I ran a poll yesterday on my Facebook group and I was asking people, how has coronavirus and the lockdown precisely affected your marriage? How would you say on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being most negatively and 5 being most positively, how would you say that the lockdown impacted on your marriage? And of course it's Facebook, so I got a lot of people say 5. And so for many, it afforded them the opportunity to bond, to get to know each other better, to do things together that they really had not gotten the opportunity to do, especially in Lagos, where, you know, some people leave their houses at like 4 a.m. and get back at around 11 p.m. or so. So, you know, it afforded them that opportunity. But we cannot be blind to the fact that some people had it most negatively. We heard about cases of abuse, of people going through things that they never thought possible in their marriage, in their homes, as a result of the lockdown. And this is not far-fetched from the fact that the lockdown afforded us all the opportunity to see what our marriages and our relationships really are behind the curtain of busyness and going to work and returning late and not having to deal with the problems or challenges we might have been facing. But I'd like to talk to you today about, you know, going forward, what can life be now that the lockdown to an extent has been eased off and life is beginning to gradually return to normal. I know there are a lot of people who would call you up for seminars and, you know, want to advise you on how life should be going forward. I'm not about to do that. That's because, like you know, none of us has experienced the pandemic like the coronavirus in our lifetime. I mean, the last time this kind of thing happened globally was in 1918. I think I saw a general who was alive in 1918 and is still alive, who went through this and came out and has fought coronavirus successfully. It's somewhere in the US. But that's about it. Apart from that, none of us, I mean, a generation has passed. If a generation is 100 years, or in 2020, that's a generation has passed since this kind of pandemic hit the world. And so if anybody is going to invite you for a seminar to say, oh, this is how you should deal with life going forward, I would take it with a pinch of salt. And I would ask you to do the same thing. But what can we do? We can look at things in retrospect. We can think, because that's about the hardest thing to do. A lot of times we go through the motions day in, day out, without stopping to think what life is teaching us, what we're learning from our experiences, what we can change, what we can do better, what we can influence, or what we can change about our lives and our environment or our relationships. And so because we go through the motions and refuse or unconsciously do not stop to think, It is very possible to do the same things this year that we did last year. Do the same things last year that didn't work for our marriages and continue to do them this year. But the lockdown afforded us an opportunity to see things for what they really are. What have you seen? What have you learned about your relationship, about your husband or wife? What have you learned about your children? What have you learned about life, about the importance of money, about the importance of happiness? What have you learned about your personality? What have you learned about what you can take, your limits, your threshold for pain? What have you learned about yourself? Can you look introspectively and learn one or two things that can help you make a better choice? And I trust that if you do, you could come back with a testimony. And so with that, I'd like to, close this segment of the Fulfilling Singlehood and Married Life session with you about coronavirus and how it's affecting or how it has affected your marriage, our relationships, how we're doing on a personal basis. Until I come your way again next time on the Fulfilling Singlehood and Married Life segment on Hero TV, I'd like to encourage you. Remember, single or married, you have a right to a fulfilling life. Don't let anybody or any circumstance cheat you out of it. Thank you once again. God bless you.